popular culture makes the Dark Ages look like a complete black hole in history, a time when Rome's light went out and Britain plunged into complete barbarism and ignorance. But the reality? It was actually one of the most fascinating and formative periods in British history. And I'm about to show you exactly what your life would have been like if you'd been born in this misunderstood era. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Alright, let's head back to post-Roman Britain. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. So congratulations, you just woke up in Britain, circa 410 AD. The wooden shutters of your room barely hold back the grey morning light as you blink awake. Not like your modern blackout curtains, these crude wooden slats let in drafts of cool, damp air. You're lying on a straw-filled mattress, nothing like your memory foam bed right now. The linen sheet beneath you is rough spun, and the woolen blanket covering your body is heavy, slightly itchy, but undeniably warm. Your breath forms small clouds in the air. April mornings in post-Roman Britain are still bitter cold. The fire in the central hearth of your family's home died down overnight, and no one's rekindled it yet. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake the others. Your two younger siblings sleep on pallets nearby, and you can hear your parents stirring in the adjacent room. Your family is fortunate. You live in what was once a modest Roman villa, not the massive estate of a governor, but a comfortable home built in the Roman style by your great-grandfather, who served as a minor official in the provincial government. But Rome is gone now. The legions left last year. Emperor Honorius sent a letter telling Britain to look to its own defence. Some people say the empire will return, others say it's gone for good. You rise and pad across the cold stone floor. The mosaic that once depicted Bacchus and his wine cup is cracked in several places now, with no skilled artisans left to repair it. You've lived your entire 16 years in this house, but it feels different now. The plaster walls that once gleamed white are stained with soot from winter fires. The hypocaust, the underfloor heating system, hasn't worked properly in years. No one remembers how to fix it. You splash water from a ceramic basin onto your face, the shock of cold instantly driving away the last wisps of sleep. Then you scrub your teeth with a frayed twig, just as your mother taught you. Dental hygiene isn't completely forgotten, even if the finer points of Roman civilization are fading. Outside, a rooster crows. Time to start the day. You pull on a simple tunic made of locally woven wool, dyed a muted blue with woad. Over this goes a cloak fastened at the shoulder with a bronze brooch, one of your most prized possessions passed down from your grandmother. Your leather shoes are worn but serviceable. You tie leather thongs around your calves to keep your trousers from dragging. When you step into the main room, your mother is already kneeling at the hearth, coaxing flames from the embers with practiced motions. She doesn't look up as you enter. The bread needs kneading, she says. Your father's gone to check the fields. You nod and move to the wooden table where a lump of dough sits in a pottery bowl. This is your morning ritual now. Before the Romans left, your family had servants for such tasks, but they've all gone, some back to their villages, others fled east with the retreating administration. Your fingers work the dough rhythmically. It's a simple mixture of barley and rye, not the fine wheat flour that once came from Gaul. The coarse texture feels familiar under your hands. Your stomach growls in anticipation, even knowing the resulting bread will be dense and heavy. They're saying more Saxons have landed near Dewbury, your mother says, her voice carefully neutral. Dewbris, what the Romans called Dover, is the closest port to the continent. Traders or raiders, you ask, though you already know the answer. The Germanic peoples from across the sea have been coming for generations, some to trade, increasingly more to plunder. Raiders, she sighs. Aetius says they burned 3 farmsteads before the local militia drove them back. Aetius is the smith in the nearby settlement, what's left of the vicus that once served the Roman fort on the hill. He hears all the news from travellers passing through. Will father join the militia again? You try to keep the worry from your voice. Last autumn he spent 2 weeks patrolling the coast with other local men. He returned unharmed, but thinner and grey with exhaustion. He says we need to finish planting first. Your mother pokes at the fire, adding small twigs to build the heat. The world may be changing, but we still need to eat. This is the reality of your new life. The Romans brought centuries of relative peace and prosperity. Now you're caught between worlds, not fully Roman anymore, not yet whatever Britain is becoming. Outside, the sun breaks through the clouds, casting long shadows across the overgrown courtyard. Through the doorway you can see the fields beyond, where your father works with a wooden plough pulled by the family's only ox. The villa sits on a gentle rise, giving you a view of the surrounding countryside. To the east you can just make out the stone walls of what was once a thriving Roman town. Most of the buildings inside are empty now, their roofs collapsing. A few stubborn families remain, clustering near the old forum. To the west lies the forest, creeping closer each year as nature reclaims land once cleared by Roman engineering. And to the north, barely visible on the horizon, stands the old Roman fort, now occupied by Vortigern's men. Vortigern styles himself as protector of southern Britain, filling the vacuum left by Roman authority. Some say he's invited Saxon mercenaries to help defend against Pictish raiders from the north. Others whisper he's making himself a king. Your mother interrupts your thoughts. Take this to your father when you've finished with the bread. She hands you a small clay bottle stoppered with wax. Inside is her precious herbal tincture, a remedy for your father's aching back, made from meadowsweet and willow bark, steeped in honey and strong ale. You shape the dough into a round loaf and score the top with a knife. Not the proper Roman pattern your grandmother used, but a simple cross. Your mother takes it from you and slides it into the clay oven built into the side of the hearth. It'll be ready when you return, she says. Don't dawdle. The morning air is crisp when you step outside, carrying the medicine and a water skin. The villa's gardens, once orderly rows of vegetables and herbs imported from across the empire, have grown wild and tangled. Still you spot useful plants among the chaos. Thyme, rosemary, and borage volunteer among the encroaching weeds. You take the path down to the fields, passing the old bathhouse, its roof now partially collapsed. No one uses it anymore. The lead pipes were pulled out and sold years ago when the taxes became too burdensome. Now you and your family bathe in the stream during summer and make do with basin washes when it's cold. Your father straightens when he sees you approaching, one hand pressed to his lower back. He's only 40, but years of unaccustomed farm labour have aged him. Before the Romans left, he was a tax collector, educated, literate in both Latin and Greek, able to calculate complex sums in his head. Now he's learning to be a farmer, his soft hands roughened by calluses, his pale skin tanned by the sun. Mother sent this, you say, handing him the medicine. He takes a grateful sip, wincing at the bitter taste. The barley field is nearly done, he says, gesturing to the ploughed earth behind him. Tomorrow we'll start on the rye. Will it be enough? You can't help asking. Last winter was lean, with stored food running out before spring arrived. Your father's face is grim but determined. It must be. Rome won't feed us anymore. This is what everyone is learning now, to rely on themselves, on their neighbours, on the land. The elaborate trade networks that once brought olive oil from Spain, wine from Italy, and grain from Egypt have collapsed. Now, what you can't grow or make, you do without. As if reading your thoughts, your father says, "Aetius tells me a merchant came through yesterday. From Gaul. He had salt and some spices to trade." Your heart lifts at this news. Salt is precious now, necessary for preserving meat for winter. What did he want in exchange? Metal, tools, weapons? Your father shrugs. Things we can't spare. You nod, understanding. The economy is changing, reverting to barter and direct exchange of goods. The Roman coins you still use among yourselves are becoming scarce, and many people distrust them anyway. A shout from the direction of the settlement interrupts your conversation. You both turn to see a rider galloping along the old Roman road, kicking up dust. "Stay here," your father says, his voice sharp with sudden tension. He hands you the ox's lead and strides toward the road, one hand resting on the knife at his belt. You watch as he intercepts the rider, who reins in his lathered horse. They speak briefly, your father's posture growing more rigid with each passing moment. When he returns to you, his face is ashen. "What is it?" you ask, fear blooming in your chest. "Raiders," he says simply. "Not Saxons this time. Picts from the north. They've broken through near the old wall and are moving south." "How many?" "Enough." He takes the ox's lead from your hand. "Go back to the villa. Tell your mother to pack food and blankets. We may need to shelter in the old fort tonight." You hesitate. "And you?" "I'll bring the ox in and join you shortly. Go now." You run back to the villa, your mind racing. This is the new reality of Britain without Rome's protection. Threats can come from any direction. Saxons from the east, Picts from the north, Irish from the west. The old Roman defences are crumbling, and the local militias are poorly organised and equipped. When you burst into the main room, your mother takes one look at your face and knows. She doesn't waste time with questions, immediately calling your siblings and beginning to gather essentials. "Take only what we need for a few days," she instructs, her voice calm but her movements quick and efficient, "and bring your grandfather's old sword from behind the grain bins." This surprises you. The sword, a Roman gladius that your grandfather carried as an auxiliary officer, has hung unused for years. Father has his knife, you say. Your mother's eyes are hard. A knife may not be enough this time. You retrieve the sword, wrapped in oiled cloth to protect it from rust. It's heavier than you expected, the bronze hilt worn smooth from your grandfather's grip. You've never trained with it. Such military skills seemed unnecessary in your lifetime. Now you wish you had. Outside, you hear shouting from the direction of the settlement. Smoke rises from one of the distant farmsteads. Your younger siblings, a boy of 10 and a girl of 7, watch wide-eyed as your mother stuffs bread, dried meat and apples into a cloth sack. "What about our things?" your sister asks, clutching her wooden doll. "We'll come back for them," your mother assures her, though her eyes meet yours over the child's head, and you both know this is far from certain. The world is changing. The certainties of Roman life, the laws, the trade, the relative peace are gone. Now you must adapt, as your ancestors did before Rome came. The knowledge is there in your blood and bones, passed down through generations of Britons who lived off this land long before the eagles came. You wrap the sword belt around your waist, adjusting it to fit your slimmer frame. It feels foreign, yet somehow right, as if your grandfather's spirit approves of this moment. Your father appears in the doorway, breathless from running. "They're closer than we thought," he says. "No time for the fort. We need to hide in the old storage caves by the stream." These caves, really just deep cellars dug into the hillside, were used by your great-grandfather to store grain and wine in the villa's prosperous days. They're damp and uncomfortable, but well hidden beneath thick vegetation. As your family hurries from the villa, you cast one last glance back at the only home you've ever known. The morning sun illuminates the weathered tile roof, the crumbling plaster walls, the remnants of Roman luxury slowly returning to the earth. Will you ever see it again? Will your children or grandchildren remember that once this was part of the greatest empire the world had ever known? For now, such questions must wait. Britain is entering its dark age, not because knowledge has disappeared or civilization has truly ended, but because the old certainties are gone. In this new world, survival comes first. Learning to adapt, to blend Roman ways with ancient British knowledge will determine whether your family thrives or perishes in the decades to come. As you follow your parents down the overgrown path toward the stream, you realize that you stand at a turning point in history. The Roman chapter of Britain's story is ending. What happens next will be written by people like you, caught between worlds, carrying the past forward into an uncertain future. The path leads downward toward the shelter of the earth. Behind you, thin columns of smoke rise from scattered farmsteads, and to the north, just visible through the trees, men are moving, small dark figures against the horizon, coming ever closer. You adjust the unfamiliar weight of your grandfather's sword and hurry to catch up with your family. Whatever comes next, you will face it together, as Britons have always done. The clouds part briefly, allowing a shaft of sunlight to illuminate the path ahead. For just a moment it feels like a sign, not from the Christian God your mother prays to, nor from the old Roman deities, but from something older still, the spirit of Britain itself, enduring beyond empires and invasions, beyond individual lives and generations. This land has seen peoples come and go. It will survive this transition too, and so perhaps will you. You quicken your pace, moving from the fading light of one age into the uncertain dawn of another. The small settlement of Gleston rises from the morning mist like a stubborn memory. 40 years have passed since Rome abandoned Britain, and the world has transformed around this cluster of wooden buildings nestled alongside the stone ruins of what was once a minor Roman trading post. You stand at the edge of the village common, your breath visible in the cool morning air. Smoke rises from thatch-roofed houses, curling upward in lazy spirals. The village is coming alive around you. A half-century after the legions departed, Britain has fragmented into a patchwork of small communities. Some cling to Roman ways, others embrace older traditions, and many, like Gleston, have forged something new from the pieces of the past. You are the grandchild of that Romano-British family that fled the villa 2 generations ago. Their desperate flight through the countryside ended here, among a group of survivors who banded together for protection and sustenance. Over time, what began as a temporary refuge became a permanent settlement. The sun breaks through the clouds, illuminating the modest wooden hall at the village centre. Once a month, the village council meets there to settle disputes and make decisions. Your father is among them now, not because of Roman heritage, but because he's proven himself as a skilled carpenter and respected voice of reason. Aelfwyn, stop daydreaming and help me with these loaves. The voice breaks your reverie. Your Aunt Brianna stands at the communal bread oven, perspiration beading on her forehead despite the cool air. The stone oven, built with rocks scavenged from the Roman ruins, serves the entire eastern portion of the village, and each family takes turns maintaining the fire and supervising the baking. You hurry over, using a long wooden paddle to remove several round loaves from the oven's depths. The bread is a far cry from the coarse barley loaves your ancestors ate in those first chaotic years after Rome's departure. This is proper wheat bread made possible by the relative stability your community has achieved. Mind you don't burn yourself, Brianna cautions, though her tone is affectionate. At 16, you're considered almost an adult, trusted with important tasks, yet still learning the complexities of village life. The aroma of fresh bread draws children like bees to honey. 2 small boys appear, hoping for scraps. You recognize them as the tanner's sons, their clothing bearing the faint but distinctive odor of their father's trade. Go on with you, Brianna says, though she slips each child a small piece of crust, and tell your mother her loaves will be ready by midday. As the children scamper off, you help stack the finished bread in a willow basket. These loaves will feed 3 families today, including your own. Tomorrow, another group will use the oven. This system of shared resources and staggered labour has evolved organically over the years, allowing the community to survive despite limited tools and expertise. Take these to Elder Oswine's house, Brianna says, handing you 2 loaves wrapped in linen. He's having those traders from the coast for midday meal. You nod, understanding the importance of the task. Oswine is the village headman, elected by the council for his wisdom and fairness. The coastal traders bring valuable salt, metal tools, and occasionally exotic goods from distant lands. Maintaining good relations with them is crucial for Gleston's prosperity. The village has grown considerably since its founding. What began as a cluster of hastily constructed shelters now comprises about 30 households arranged in a rough circle around the common grazing ground. Some buildings, like Oswine's Hall and the small wooden church, boast plank walls and proper wooden shingles. Most homes are wattle and daub constructions with thatched roofs, simpler but effective against Britain's damp climate. As you walk through the settlement, you pass women preparing the midday meal, men repairing tools or working leather, and children chasing chickens that peck at the muddy ground. Life here bears little resemblance to the Roman villa your grandparents described, yet there are echoes of that lost world. The iron cooking pots passed down through generations, the occasional glass bead or bronze brooch worn as jewellery, the Latin words that pepper the evolving language of your community. Outside Elder Oswine's hall, you pause to straighten your woolen tunic and adjust the linen headscarf that marks you as an unmarried woman. Your clothing is hand-spun and hand-dyed, coloured with woad for blue and various plants for greens and yellows. The patterns woven into your belt reflect both Roman geometric designs and older British motifs, a visual representation of your blended heritage. You knock on the wooden door frame, since the door itself stands open to catch the spring breeze. Inside, voices murmur in conversation. "Enter," calls a deep voice, Oswine himself. The hall's interior is dim after the bright morning light. A central hearth provides both warmth and cooking heat, its smoke rising toward a hole in the roof. Wooden benches line the walls, and at the far end sits Oswine on a carved chair, one of the few such pieces of furniture in the entire village. 3 strangers sit opposite him, their sea-weathered faces marking them as the coastal traders. Their clothing is different from village attire: leather boots that rise to the knee, woolen cloaks fastened with elaborate brooches, and most notably sealskin caps that seem exotic to inland eyes. "Ah, Elfwyn," Oswine says, rising to greet you. "Brianna's bread, I presume. Perfect timing." You present the loaves with a slight bow, a gesture that reflects the formal manners still taught by the village elders. Oswine takes them with a nod of thanks. "Stay a moment," he says. "These men bring interesting news from the east." The oldest trader, a man with a grizzled beard, streaked with grey, looks you over with shrewd eyes. "Your grandfather was Roman, wasn't he, girl?" The question surprises you. "My great-grandfather served Rome," you answer carefully, "but we are Britons." He nods, seemingly satisfied. "They're coming again, you know. Not Romans this time. Saxons, Angles, Jutes. More every season. They've established kingdoms in the east. This is not entirely news. For years there have been reports of Germanic settlers establishing permanent territories along Britain's eastern shores. What began as raids evolved into migration, with families crossing the North Sea to claim land. "Do they threaten the coast road?" Oswine asks, his voice betraying concern. The ancient track that connects Gleston to the sea is the village's lifeline to trade. "Not yet," the trader replies, "but they're pushing westward. The British kingdoms are fighting back in some places. In others, they're making accommodations, trading land for peace." You listen intently, understanding the implications. Gliston exists in a precarious balance, too small to defend itself against a determined attack. The village relies on its remoteness and good relations with neighbouring settlements for protection. There's a warlord rising among the Britons, another trader adds. Some call him Ambrosius, others have a different name for him. He pauses dramatically. Artorius. A murmur passes through the room. Even you have heard whispered stories of this war leader who's supposedly uniting British resistance against the Saxon advance. Tales for children, scoffs the third trader, the youngest of the group. What matters is that goods still flow along the old roads, and silver still buys what a man needs. This pragmatic assessment breaks the tension, and Oswine laughs. Indeed, and you'll find Gliston has goods worth your silver. Our tanner has exceeded himself this season, and the wool from our sheep is exceptionally fine. As the conversation turns to trade, you take this as your cue to leave. Oswine catches your eye and nods slightly. A dismissal, but also acknowledgement of your presence during this important exchange. As the headman's carpenter, your father will hear all the details tonight. Outside, the village hums with midday activity. The smell of cooking food mingles with the earthy scents of livestock and turned soil. Spring planting is underway in the fields beyond the settlement, where strips of land are allocated to each family according to need and ability to work them. You head toward the small stream that provides Glaston with fresh water. Several women are already there, filling wooden buckets and exchanging gossip. Among them is Edith, whose family trades primarily in wool and whose brother has been showing interest in you at recent village gatherings. Elfwin, she calls, waving you over. Is it true the coastal traders are at Oswine's? You nod, joining her at the stream's edge. They bring news of Saxon kingdoms in the east. Edith's eyes widen. My father says we should be concerned. Others think they'll never push this far inland. Oswine seemed worried, you admit, lowering your voice, but the traders still travel the coast road without trouble. As you help Edith fill her bucket, your thoughts drift to the wider world beyond Gliston. Your grandparents spoke of a Britain fully integrated into a vast empire, with roads connecting it to distant Rome itself. That world is gone, yet people adapt. New connections form, new communities rise from the remnants of the old. The sound of a horn interrupts your musing, a single clear note that echoes across the settlement. Everyone freezes, conversations halting mid-sentence. A second blast follows, and tension visibly drains from the villagers. 2 blasts means visitors, but not danger. Had it been a single prolonged note, every man would be reaching for weapons, every woman gathering children. Travellers on the North Road, someone calls out, and curious villagers begin moving toward the village entrance. You and Edith join the small crowd gathering to witness the newcomers. Visitors are relatively uncommon in spring, when most communities are focused on planting. They typically bring news, goods for trade, or occasionally new skills. The travellers appear around the bend in the road, a group of 7 people leading 4 pack horses. Their clothing marks them as neither coastal traders nor people from the nearby British settlements. They wear long robes belted at the waist, and several carry wooden staffs topped with simple crosses. Monks, whispers Edith beside you, from the north. Christianity has maintained a foothold in Britain since Roman times, though practices vary widely from place to place. Gleaston's small wooden church serves both Christians and those who maintain older beliefs, with the village priest negotiating a pragmatic balance between traditions. The monks approach Oswin, who has emerged from his hall to greet them. The villagers watch with undisguised curiosity as formal greetings are exchanged. Then, to everyone's surprise, Oswine gestures toward the church and leads the visitors in that direction. "What do you suppose they want?" Edith asks. "Perhaps they journey to establish a new monastery," you suggest. "I've heard they seek remote places for their settlements." The idea of a monastery near Gleaston is both intriguing and slightly concerning. Such establishments often become centres of learning and craft, but they also represent change, and change has not always been kind to Britain in recent memory. As the crowd disperses, returning to their midday tasks, you make your way home with a bucket of fresh water. Your family's dwelling is modest but comfortable, a rectangular structure with walls of wattle and daub, a packed earth floor covered with fresh rushes, and a central hearth that serves for both cooking and warmth. Your mother stirs a pot of pottage hanging above the fire, a thick stew of barley, beans, and whatever vegetables are available. Today the first tender greens of spring have been added, along with precious salt preserved from last year's trade. The bread is ready, you tell her, setting down the water bucket, and monks have arrived from the north. "Oh, monks?" She looks up with interest. Like many in Gleaston, your mother practices a blend of Christian devotion and older traditions. She wears a cross carved from jet alongside a small amulet of polished amber inherited from her grandmother. "I wonder if they bring books." Books are rare treasures now. Your family owns none, though your father can read the Latin script taught to him by his father. Literacy has declined since Roman times, but hasn't disappeared entirely. In Gleaston, the priest maintains a few precious manuscripts, and some elders teach children their letters using sticks in the dirt or chalk on slate. "They spoke with Oswine and went to the church," you explain, helping your mother prepare the meal. "Your younger brothers will return hungry from the fields where they're helping with planting, and your father has been working since dawn on repairs to the village palisade." The simple wooden fortification encircling Gleaston is another adaptation to post-Roman life. Not as formidable as Roman walls or the hill forts of ancient times, it nevertheless provides some protection against wild animals and small groups of raiders. Each family contributes to its maintenance according to their abilities. As you work, you reflect on how your community has created a new way of life from the fragments of the past. Roman techniques for agriculture blend with older British farming methods. Christian prayers mingle with pre-Roman rituals for planting and harvest. Latin words pepper the evolving language spoken in Gleaston, neither fully Roman nor purely British, but something new emerging from the meeting of cultures. This is the reality of Dark Age Britain, not a descent into complete barbarism as later histories might suggest, but a time of adaptation, of holding on to useful knowledge while developing new solutions to the challenges of a changed world. The aroma of the cooking pottage fills the small house, and your stomach rumbles in anticipation. Midday meal is the largest of the day, providing strength for afternoon work. In the evening, you'll likely have bread with cheese or perhaps leftover stew, eaten as the light fades and the village prepares for sleep. Outside, you hear the shouts of children playing, the rhythmic sound of the blacksmith's hammer, the bleating of sheep being driven to fresh pasture. Life continues in this small community, changed from Roman times yet thriving in its own way, creating the foundations of what will someday be medieval England. The story of Britain isn't ending with Rome's departure. It's simply turning a page, beginning a new chapter written by people like you and your neighbours in Gleston, ordinary men and women adapting to extraordinary times, their daily lives forming the bridge between ancient past and medieval future. The last rays of sunset cast long shadows across the valley as you make your way along the winding path. 100 years have now passed since the Romans departed Britain, and the island has transformed once again. The wooden cross atop the small stone church catches the fading light, gleaming like a beacon against the deepening blue sky. This is Lindisfarne, Holy Island, connected to the Northumbrian mainland by a narrow causeway that disappears beneath the tide twice each day. It's a fitting symbol for Britain itself in this age of transition, sometimes connected to the wider world, sometimes isolated, existing in the liminal space between old ways and new. You are Cuthbert, a novice at the island's monastery. At 17, you've spent 3 years under the guidance of the monks, learning letters, prayers, and the crafts that sustain this isolated community. Your family, humble shepherds from the nearby hills, gave you to the church as a boy, hoping to secure you a better life than they could provide. The wicker basket on your arm is heavy with freshly collected eggs from the monastery's hens. These will become part of tomorrow's simple breakfast, eaten after dawn prayers. Your woolen robe, undyed and rough-spun, keeps the evening chill at bay as you hurry to complete your chores before vespers. Behind you rises the monastery itself, not the grand stone structure that future generations will build, but a collection of simple buildings constructed in the Irish tradition brought by Bishop Aidan. The main church is stone, but the living quarters, workshops and refectory are timber framed with walls of wattle and daub and roofs of thatch. Smoke rises from the kitchen hearth where Brother Oswald prepares the evening meal of fish stew and barley bread. As you approach the monastery gate, you pause to observe a group of local people gathering near the small wooden cross that marks the boundary between the sacred enclosure and the secular world. They've brought offerings, fish, honey, a wheel of cheese, seeking blessings for a sick child who lies bundled in his mother's arms. Brother Ethelwald meets them, his tonsured head bowed in greeting. Though the monastery follows Roman practices in matters of faith, the monks understand the importance of serving the local population, many of whom blend Christian devotion with older beliefs. The healing prayers Ethelwald will offer combine scripture with traditional knowledge of herbs and remedies. This pragmatic approach has served the Church well as Christianity gradually spreads across Britain. The old gods are not directly challenged but slowly absorbed, their sacred sites repurposed, their festivals given Christian significance. The people's need for divine intercession, for healing and protection, remains constant even as the names they invoke change. You slip past the gathering and enter the monastery grounds. In the central courtyard, several brothers are completing their daily tasks. 2 elderly monks carefully tend the herb garden that provides both food and medicine. a middle-aged brother painstakingly repairs a damaged fishing net. 3 novices near your age scrub wooden platters with sand in preparation for the evening meal. Cuthbert. The voice belongs to Brother Bede, the monastery's teacher and your particular mentor. Though only 30, Bede's reputation for learning extends beyond Lindisfarne. He beckons you toward the small wooden hut that serves as the scriptorium. Inside, precious manuscripts line crude wooden shelves, fewer than 20 volumes in total, each representing untold hours of labor. A slanted writing desk occupies the center of the room, where a half-finished page awaits completion. "I've something to show you," Bede says, carefully unrolling a piece of vellum. "A letter from Canterbury. The Archbishop seeks information about our practices here in Northumbria." The implications are significant. Since Augustine's mission to Kent a generation ago, Roman Christianity has been advancing northward, sometimes clashing with the Irish traditions that took root in northern Britain. The Synod of Whitby lies in the future, but already tensions simmer between different Christian traditions. "Are we to change our ways?" you ask, setting down your basket of eggs. Bede's expression remains neutral. "Knowledge flows in many directions, Cuthbert. Rome brings certain traditions, yes, but they learn from us as well. The important work is preserving wisdom, not arguing over the date of Easter." This pragmatism characterizes much of life in 7th century Britain. After generations of upheaval, practical solutions take precedence over dogmatic purity. Communities adapt, incorporating useful elements from different traditions while discarding what doesn't serve their needs. The monastery bell sounds, calling the brothers to evening prayers. You follow Bede from the scriptorium, joining the procession of dark-robed figures moving toward the small stone church. Inside, tallow candles cast flickering shadows across whitewashed walls decorated with simple, painted crosses. The brothers arrange themselves in rows, the abbot at their head. The evening office begins, Latin prayers chanted in the distinctive cadence that characterizes Northumbrian monasticism. Though you understand only portions of the ancient language, the rhythm is soothing, creating a sense of connection to something larger and more enduring than individual lives. Through the open door, you can see the sky darkening over the North Sea, stars appearing one by one. On clear nights like this, it's said that the holy men can see all the way to Iona, where Columba established the monastery that birthed your own community. The sea connects rather than divides, carrying not just physical goods, but ideas, beliefs, and practices between Ireland, Britain, and the continent. After prayers come the evening meal, eaten in silence as one brother reads aloud from Scripture. Tonight's reading tells the story of loaves and fishes, appropriate accompaniment to the simple fish stew served in wooden bowls. You eat mindfully, aware that many outside the monastery walls have less. For while monasteries are centers of learning and spiritual practice, they also serve crucial economic and social functions in this period. When harvests fail, it is often the monastery that feeds the hungry. When illness strikes, monks provide what medical care exists. When disputes arise, abbots frequently serve as mediators between parties. The meal concludes with a prayer of thanks, and the brothers disperse to their evening tasks. Some will continue working by candlelight, copying manuscripts, repairing tools, preparing materials for tomorrow. Others will retire to pray or rest. As a novice, you're assigned to help in the kitchen, cleaning the cooking vessels and banking the fire for morning. Brother Oswald supervises your work, his gnarled hands efficiently scraping food remnants into a bucket for the pigs kept behind the refectory. Though approaching 60, ancient by the standards of the age, he works with the energy of a much younger man. We have visitors coming tomorrow, he mentions as you scour a pot with sand and seawater, pilgrims from the south seeking healing at Aiden's tomb. Such visitors are increasingly common as Christianity establishes deeper roots in Britain. A network of holy sites draws the faithful on journeys across the island and beyond. Some travel to atone for sins, others seeking miracles, still others driven by genuine spiritual hunger. Will they stay long? You ask, thinking of the extra bread that will need baking. A few days, perhaps. The woman among them is quite ill. Oswald shakes his head. The journey itself may prove too much for her. Travel in 7th century Britain remains difficult and dangerous. Roman roads still exist but suffer from decades of neglect. Bridges have collapsed, sections have washed away, and in some places forest has reclaimed the ancient thoroughfares. Still, people move about the island more than casual observation might suggest. Traders, missionaries, pilgrims, and occasionally armies crisscross the landscape. Your work complete, you step outside into the full dark of early evening. The monastery is quieting now, brothers retiring to the dormitory for the night's rest before matins calls them to prayer again in the pre-dawn hours. A few candles still burn in the church where the abbot and senior monks continue their devotions. At the edge of the monastery grounds, you pause to look toward the mainland. Pinpricks of light mark the fishing village that has grown alongside the religious community. Humble homes housing those who serve the monastery in various capacities. Boatmen who ferry visitors and supplies. Shepherds who tend the monks' flocks. Craftspeople who assist with building and repairs. This symbiotic relationship between secular and religious communities characterizes much of Britain in this period. Where Roman towns once dominated the landscape, new centres of population have emerged around monasteries, royal estates, and trading posts. Settlements form and grow not according to imperial planning but organic need. The night air carries the tang of salt and seaweed. Tomorrow the tide will isolate Lindisfarne until midday, creating the separation from worldly concerns that the early monks sought. Yet the monastery is far from self-sufficient. It relies on the mainland for many necessities, just as the mainland communities depend on the monastery's spiritual and practical services. A movement near the shore catches your attention, a small boat pulling up on the beach. Late visitors are unusual, especially with the tide turning. You watch as 3 figures disembark, one supporting another who seems barely able to walk. The third figure glances in your direction, and even in the dim light you recognize Brother Egbert, who left 2 weeks ago to visit a nobleman taken ill near Bamberg. The fact that he returns after dark with companions in obvious distress suggests urgency. You hurry to meet them, calling softly so as not to disturb the evening quiet. "Brother Egbert, do you need assistance?" His face, when you reach him, is drawn with exhaustion. "Cuthbert, good. Help me bring them to the infirmary. The woman has fever, and the man was wounded defending her from robbers on the road. The woman is unconscious, her skin burning to the touch as you help carry her. The man limps beside you, one arm wrapped in a blood-soaked cloth. Neither wears the simple clothing of local people. Their garments, though travel-stained, are finely woven and dyed in rich colours. "Oh, who are they?" you ask Egbert as you approach the small building that serves as the monastery's hospital. "The Thegn of Elfrixton and his sister," Egbert replies quietly. "They journey to pray for the recovery of their father, who lies near death. They were set upon by brigands 2 days' journey south of here." The information gives you pause. These are people of rank, members of the warrior aristocracy that has emerged in post-Roman Britain. The Thegn, despite his injury, carries himself with the confidence of one accustomed to command. The sword at his side, temporarily peace-bound with cord in respect for the holy site, marks him as a fighting man. Brother Wilfrid, the monastery's infirmarian, takes charge immediately upon your arrival. He directs you to prepare poultices of herbs while he examines the patients. The small room, illuminated by rushlights, smells of dried herbs and sickness. "The wound is clean," Wilfrid pronounces after inspecting the man's arm, "but the lady burns with fever. We must reduce the heat." What follows is a practical demonstration of 7th century medicine, a blend of herbal knowledge inherited from Roman physicians, folk remedies passed down through generations of British healers, and Christian prayers for divine intervention. Willow bark for pain and fever, honey to prevent corruption in the wound, compresses of cool water, invocations to saints known for healing miracles. The Thegn watches anxiously as his sister is tended. "Will she live?" he asks finally, his accent marking him as someone from the southern kingdoms. Wilfrid's answer is measured. "Her life is in God's hands. We will do what we can." This balance between human effort and divine will characterizes the age. People work with the tools and knowledge available to them while recognizing the limits of their understanding. Prayer and practical action go hand in hand. As you assist with grinding herbs for the healing poultices, you observe the interaction between the noble visitors and the monks. There is mutual respect despite their different stations. The monastery transcends traditional social boundaries, bringing together men from various backgrounds in common purpose. Some brothers, like the abbot, come from noble families. Others, like yourself, have humbler origins. Within the monastery walls, these distinctions matter less than in the outside world, though they never disappear entirely. Learning and piety can elevate a man of low birth, while noble connections often determine which monks rise to positions of authority. The work continues well into the night. You're eventually dismissed to get some rest before matins, leaving Wilfrid and Egbert to maintain their vigil over the sick woman. As you make your way to the dormitory, the monastery sleeps around you, a small island of order and purpose in a world still finding its way after the collapse of Roman authority. In your straw-filled pallet, listening to the soft breathing of other novices around you, you reflect on the day's events. The arrival of the noble siblings brings news from distant parts of Britain, reminders of the wider world beyond Lindisfarne's shores. Their journey, interrupted by violence yet continuing in faith, mirrors Britain's own path through these uncertain times. The old Roman order has faded. New kingdoms rise and fall across the landscape. Different traditions, native British, Roman, Irish, Anglo-Saxon, blend and transform one another. Yet certain constants remain. People still seek meaning and purpose. Communities still form around shared needs and beliefs. Knowledge is still valued and preserved, though in new forms and institutions. As sleep claims you, your last conscious thought is of the manuscripts in the scriptorium, each page a bridge connecting past wisdom to future generations. In the morning, you'll resume your lessons, adding your small contribution to the continued transmission of learning through the so-called Dark Ages, which contain far more light than later histories might suggest. Outside, the tide rises around Lindisfarne, temporarily separating it from the mainland. The rhythm of water, like the rhythm of prayers that structure monastic days, provides continuity amid change, a reminder that even in times of transformation, certain patterns endure. Night falls quickly along the eastern coast of Northumbria. The last glow of sunset fades over the North Sea as your village prepares for darkness. 200 years have passed since the Romans left Britain, and life has found a rhythm in the kingdoms that emerged from that chaos. But now a new uncertainty stalks the coastline. They call them Norsemen, or Danes, or simply the heathens. For 30 years their dragon-prowed ships have raided Britain's shores. Monasteries burned first, Lindisfarne, Jarrow, Iona, their treasures and scholars carried away across the sea. Now the raiders strike anywhere wealth might be found, and coastal villages like yours have learned to fear the horizon. You are Leofric, a fisherman's son in the settlement of Dunholm. At 19, you've already seen 3 raids in your lifetime. The first came when you were just 10, a nightmare of burning thatch and screaming villagers that still haunts your dreams. The second, 3 years later, was less devastating. The warning came in time for most people to flee inland with their valuables. The third, last summer, was repelled by the Fyrd, the local militia, with help from the Lord's household warriors. Tonight you stand atop the wooden watchtower erected at the village's seaward edge. Your woolen cloak, dyed a deep blue with woad, provides little protection against the sharp coastal wind. A small fire burns in a clay brazier beside you, more for light to signal with than warmth. Your task is simple. Watch the sea and sound the alarm if ships appear. Below, Dunholm settles into its evening routine. The village has grown over the generations, now housing nearly 300 souls. Its buildings cluster along the shoreline and up the gentle slope behind, with fields and pastures beyond. Once primarily a fishing community, Dunholm has adapted to changing times. Now a wooden palisade surrounds the settlement, and many houses have storage cellars dug deep into the earth, places to hide valuables or people when danger threatens. Smoke rises from cooking fires as families prepare their evening meals. The smell of fish stew and barley bread drifts up to your position. Your stomach rumbles in response. Your own meal waits in your family's single-room house, where your mother and younger sisters are likely wondering why you linger at your post when your watch ended at sunset. The answer stands beside you. Ethelflaed, daughter of the village reeve. Her presence at the watchtower is improper, strictly speaking. An unmarried woman of 17 should be home with her family, especially as darkness falls. But Ethelflaed has never much concerned herself with propriety. "There," she says suddenly, pointing north along the coastline. "Do you see it?" Your heart stutters as you follow her gesture, expecting to see the dreaded sail of a Norse longship. Instead, you make out the bobbing light of a torch moving steadily along the cliff path that connects Dunholm to the next settlement northward. Just a traveller, you say, releasing a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. Perhaps a messenger from Lord Edwulf. Ethelflaed nods, disappointment evident in her posture. Unlike most villagers who pray daily to be spared another raid, she seems almost to court excitement. The daughter of the village's leading official, she's learned to read and write from the local priest, and hungers for a world larger than Dunholm can provide. "My father says the king has ordered more watchtowers built," she remarks, leaning against the rough wooden railing, "and signal fires prepared on the headlands. Do you think it will help?" You adjust the wood in the brazier, sending sparks swirling into the darkening sky. She shrugs. "It might give more warning, but it won't stop them coming. This is the reality your generation has grown up with, the knowledge that safety is temporary, that the sea which provides your livelihood might any day deliver death to your doorstep. Yet life continues. Children are born, crops are planted, fish are caught, marriages are arranged." "I should go," Ethelflaed says finally. "Father will be looking for me." You nod, trying to hide your reluctance to see her leave. The torchlight catches the bronze brooch at her shoulder, a family heirloom that once belonged to her grandmother, its intricate knotwork showing both native British and Anglo-Saxon influences. Her woolen dress is dyed a rich russet colour, marking her family's prosperity. Your own clothing, while serviceable, lacks such finery. "Will you be at the gathering tomorrow?" she asks, pausing at the top of the ladder. "If the fishing is good and we return early enough," you reply. The midsummer celebration is the largest festival in Dunholm's calendar, a blend of Christian observance and older traditions that the church has never fully suppressed. She smiles, a quick flash of teeth in the gathering darkness. "Until tomorrow, then." You watch her descend the ladder and cross the open ground toward the cluster of buildings. Her father's house is one of the largest in the village, a rectangular hall with walls of split timber rather than the wattle and daub used for most dwellings. As reeve, Ethelred oversees the village's day-to-day governance on behalf of Lord Edwulf, whose fortified estate lies half a day's journey inland. When she disappears from view, you turn your attention back to the sea. Night has fully claimed the horizon now, but the quarter moon provides enough light to make out the line where water meets sky. Your watch will last another hour until Senred the Tanner's son comes to relieve you. The North Sea stretches before you, a vast highway connecting Britain to Scandinavia, Frisia, and beyond. The same waters that bring raids also carry trade, amber and furs from the north, wine and fine metalwork from the south, ideas and information from everywhere. Dunholm may seem isolated, but it exists within a complex network of connections that span hundreds of miles. Movement along the shoreline catches your eye. A group of men pulling a fishing boat above the tide line. You recognize your father among them, which means their day's work is finally done. The boat is heavy, requiring 6 men to drag it across the pebbled beach to safety. Tomorrow, well before dawn, they'll push it back into the surf and row out to check the fishing nets. Your own boat, smaller, designed for 1 or 2 people, rests nearby. You'll take it out at dawn to check the crab pots laid in the shallow waters near the headland. This rhythm of work dictates life in Dunholm. The sea and seasons govern when to fish, when to plant, when to harvest. The church calendar determines when to feast, when to fast, when to celebrate or mourn. These patterns provide structure in uncertain times, connecting you to both your ancestors and descendants. The sound of singing drifts up from the village. Evening prayers from the small wooden church. Unlike the grand stone minsters in larger settlements, Dunholm's church is a humble structure built by the villagers themselves after converting from their older beliefs. The priest, Father Cuthbert, serves not only Dunholm but 2 other nearby communities, rotating between them throughout the week. Christianity has taken firm root in Northumbria after centuries of gradual conversion, yet older practices persist, particularly in matters of birth, death, and the turning of seasons. Tomorrow's midsummer celebration will include Christian prayers alongside traditions that stretch back to pre-Roman times. The singing fades, and the village grows quieter. Families retreat into their homes for the night. In most households, the pattern is similar, a single room where all members sleep, with perhaps a curtain offering minimal privacy for parents. Beds consist of straw pallets raised slightly off the packed earth floor, with woolen blankets for warmth. In poorer homes, family members sleep close together for additional warmth, while wealthier households might have a proper wooden bedstead for the parents. Your own family's dwelling falls somewhere in the middle, modest but comfortable by the standards of the time. Your father is respected for his skill as a fisherman and boat builder. Your mother's weaving is sought after for its quality. Together they've provided a stable life for you and your 3 younger sisters, even in these unstable times. Footsteps on the ladder announce Senred's arrival to take over the watch. He climbs into view, a sturdy young man a few years older than yourself. "Anything?" he asks by way of greeting. "Just a traveller on the north path," you reply, gesturing toward your brazier. "The fire's freshly fed, should last your watch." He nods, taking your place at the railing. "They say a ship was spotted near Tynemouth yesterday. Might have been Norse, might not." This is how information travels in your world. Fragmentary, often delayed, impossible to verify without seeing for yourself. Yet such scraps of news are vital. A report of Norse ships to the north might mean nothing, or it might give precious hours of warning before an attack. "I'll tell my father," you say, wrapping your cloak tighter as you prepare to descend. Good watching. The climb down is familiar, each rung of the ladder worn smooth by countless hands. At the bottom, you pause to look back at the watchtower silhouetted against the night sky. It's a simple structure, 4 posts supporting a platform, but it represents how your community has adapted to the Norse threat. 20 years ago, no such precaution existed. Now it's unthinkable to leave the coast unwatched. The path home takes you past the village's central area, where a large fire pit stands ready for tomorrow's celebration. Several men work by torchlight, arranging benches and tables borrowed from various households. Among them is the smith. Wulfgar, hammering supports into place for the spit that will hold a roasting ox. Originally from Mercia, Wulfgar came to Dunholm 5 years ago after his own village was destroyed in a raid. His skills quickly made him indispensable, and he married a local widow within a year of his arrival. This pattern, displacement, movement, integration, plays out across Britain as communities are disrupted and reformed by violence and necessity. "Leofric," Wulfgar calls, seeing you pass. "Is your father back?" "Just now bringing in the boat," you confirm. "Good. Tell him I've finished the new oarlocks. He can collect them tomorrow." You nod and continue homeward. The smith's work is another example of adaptation. Traditional Anglo-Saxon smiths worked primarily with iron, but Wulfgar has incorporated techniques learned from examining captured Norse weapons and tools. The result is stronger, more flexible metalwork that serves the community's needs better than before. This exchange of knowledge, forced by conflict but beneficial nonetheless, occurs throughout Britain. Norse language seeps into local dialects. Norse ship designs influence local boat building. Even as communities resist raiders, they absorb elements of the very culture they fight against. Your family's house stands near the southern edge of the village. Like most dwellings in Dunholm, it's a simple rectangular structure with walls of wattle and daub and a thatched roof. A small vegetable garden occupies the space behind, providing cabbage, onions and beans to supplement the fish that forms the basis of your diet. Light flickers through the single small window, a luxury many homes lack. The opening is covered with oiled parchment rather than glass, allowing some illumination while keeping out the worst of the elements. Glass remains rare and expensive, found only in churches and the homes of the wealthy. Inside, the scene is one of domestic tranquility. Your mother sits near the central hearth, spinning wool into thread using a drop spindle. Your youngest sister, only 6, has already fallen asleep on her pallet in the corner. The other 2 girls, 12 and 14, work on simple embroidery by the light of a rush lamp, a shallow dish of fish oil with a wick of twisted plant fibre. Your father sits on the room's only proper chair, mending a fishing net with practiced motions. He looks up as you enter, his weathered face creasing in a smile. "Any ships on the horizon?" he asks, the question only half joking. It's the same greeting he offers whenever you return from watch duty. "None tonight," you reply, hanging your cloak on a wooden peg. "But Senred says there was word of a sighting near Tynemouth." Your father's hands still momentarily, then resume their work. "Could be traders, could be trouble. We'll know soon enough." This stoic acceptance characterizes your community's response to danger. There's no point dwelling on threats you cannot control. Better to acknowledge them, prepare as best you can, and continue with life's necessities. Your mother rises to serve you dinner, a wooden bowl of fish stew, thick with barley and the spring's first vegetables, accompanied by a chunk of dark bread. The family has already eaten, but your portion was kept warm near the fire. You eat hungrily, the day's work having burned through the midday meal hours ago. Father Cuthbert says we should pray especially for protection tomorrow, your younger sister mentions, looking up from her embroidery. He fears the celebration might draw attention if raiders are nearby. The midsummer gathering, with its bonfire and feast, could indeed be visible from the sea on a clear night, yet cancelling it would mean surrendering another small joy to fear, something the village has become increasingly reluctant to do. We'll post extra watches, your father says firmly, and have horses ready to carry warning to Lord Edwulf if needed, but the celebration continues. Your mother nods her agreement. In her 40 years, she's seen the village overcome numerous hardships, not just raids, but also crop failures, sickness, and the occasional disputes that arise in any community. Resilience doesn't mean ignoring danger, but rather refusing to let it define your existence. After eating, you join your father in net mending. The work is meditative, your fingers following patterns learned since childhood. This is how knowledge passes in your world, rarely through written texts, which remain precious and rare, but through direct transmission from parent to child, master to apprentice. Ethelred asked if you'd join the hunting party after tomorrow's fishing, your father mentions casually. They're seeking deer for the Lord's table. The invitation is significant. Hunting parties are typically limited to the village's leading men and their chosen companions. That the reeve would include you suggests your standing in the community is rising. I'll go, you reply, trying to sound equally casual. Your father hides a smile, seeing through your attempted nonchalance. His daughter seems to find reasons to walk past our boat shed quite often these days. Heat rises in your face. Your interest in Ethelflaed is apparently less secret than you'd hoped, though a match between you would be unusual given the difference in your family's status. It's not impossible. In these uncertain times, alliances form based on more than just inherited position. The conversation shifts to practical matters, weather expectations for tomorrow's fishing, repairs needed for the smaller boat, plans for smoking part of the catch for preservation. Soon your eyelids grow heavy, the long day taking its toll. Your sleeping pallet awaits in the corner opposite your sister's. Like theirs, it consists of a straw-filled mattress covered with woolen blankets. In winter, heavy furs provide additional warmth, but in summer, the lighter coverings suffice. As you prepare for sleep, your father secures the door with a wooden bar, another adaptation to uncertain times. Your mother banks the fire, leaving just enough embers to easily rekindle it in the morning. One by one, the rush lamps are extinguished, leaving only the faint glow from the hearth to illuminate the room. Lying on your pallet, listening to your family's breathing gradually slow and deepen, you find your thoughts returning to the sea. What ships might cross the horizon tomorrow? Will they bring trade or terror? How many more watchtowers will your children need to build? Yet, even as these questions swirl, fatigue claims you. Your last conscious thought is of Ethelflaed's smile in the torchlight, a brief moment of brightness in an age too often characterized by shadow. Outside, the moon casts silver light across Dunholm. The tide whispers against the shore. In the watchtower, Kenred keeps his vigilant gaze on the horizon, and beyond that horizon, forces continue to shape the world. Norse expansion, shifting kingdoms, evolving beliefs, their influence is washing like waves against Britain's shores, gradually transforming the island and its people in ways that will echo through centuries to come. Morning light filters through the mist rising from the River Thames, illuminating the wooden buildings of Londonwich. Nearly 500 years have passed since the Romans departed Britain, and the island has transformed once again. What was once a scattering of competing kingdoms has begun to unify under the banner of Wessex as Alfred's dream of a single English realm edges closer to reality. The settlement sprawls along the riverbank, its timber wharves busy with boats unloading goods from across the North Sea and beyond. This is no longer a place of mere survival, but a centre of trade and governance that would astonish those who lived through the tumultuous centuries after Rome's fall. You are Edwin, a 30-year-old thegn in service to King Athelstan, grandson of Alfred the Great. As the king's representative in Londonwich, you oversee the collection of tolls from merchants and ensure the king's peace is maintained in this vital trading hub. Your position reflects the increasing sophistication of governance in Anglo-Saxon England, a realm now administered through a network of loyal officials, written laws, and established procedures. Your woolen cloak, dyed a rich blue and fastened with an elaborate silver brooch, marks your status as you make your morning rounds along the waterfront. The sword at your hip is as much a symbol of authority as a practical weapon. Your boots, crafted from finely tanned leather, have never trudged behind a plough or stood in fishing boats. You were born to the emerging noble class, educated by the church and raised to serve in the administration of a kingdom that grows more organized with each passing year. "Good morning, Lord Edwin," calls a merchant as you pass his shop, its wooden shutters now open to display imported glassware from Francia. You acknowledge him with a nod, noting the respect in his address. Though not a lord in the highest sense, your position as royal then commands deference from ordinary citizens. The street beneath your feet is no longer the muddy track of earlier centuries. Wooden planks form a raised walkway along the main thoroughfare, while smaller paths are covered with gravel and crushed shells. Drainage channels divert rainwater away from buildings. These simple improvements reflect a community with the resources and organisation to invest in infrastructure, a far cry from the subsistence-focused settlements of post-Roman Britain. You pause at the river's edge, watching a large trading vessel being unloaded. The ship's design shows clear Norse influence, with a shallow draft and wide hull optimized for both sea voyages and river navigation. Ironic, you reflect, that the very people who once raided these shores have now contributed so much to Britain's maritime capabilities. The cargo reveals the extent of trade networks in this supposedly dark age. Barrels of wine from Francia, bolts of silk from Byzantium, amber from the Baltic, and spices from lands so distant that few can name them accurately. Each item will be assessed and taxed according to the king's decree, the revenue helping to fund the governance of the emerging English state. A clerk approaches, clutching a wooden writing tablet covered in wax. Literacy, once the domain of only monks and the highest nobility, has expanded among those who serve in administration. The clerk himself is likely of common birth, educated in a church school to serve the growing bureaucracy. The merchant Oswald wishes to dispute his assessment, the clerk explains, pointing toward a red-faced man arguing with officials at the customs house. He claims the goods were damaged in transit and should be taxed at a lower rate. You sigh, mentally preparing for the first of many such negotiations that will fill your day. The rule of law, established through written codes and enforced by royal representatives, has replaced the arbitrary authority of local strongmen. But this system requires constant maintenance, judgment, and occasionally compromise. I'll speak with him, you tell the clerk. Bring the documentation from his last 3 shipments as well. Let's see if this damage is a pattern rather than misfortune. This attention to record-keeping and precedent would have been foreign to your ancestors of even a century ago, but in Athelstan's England, governance increasingly relies on written records rather than memory alone, a transformation quietly revolutionizing how society functions. The morning passes in a blur of disputes resolved, taxes collected, and permissions granted. By midday, you retreat to the stone building that serves as both your residence and the centre of royal administration in Londonwick. The structure stands 2 stories tall, with glass windows on the upper floor, luxuries that announce the king's authority in physical form. Inside, your wife Edith oversees the household staff preparing the midday meal. Unlike the women of earlier centuries, she's not directly involved in food preparation or textile work. As the wife of a royal official, her role is supervisory, managing servants, maintaining social connections, and occasionally acting as your representative in your absence. The bishop's envoy arrived while you were at the waterfront, she informs you, adjusting the keys that hang from her belt, symbols of her authority over the household. He awaits you in the receiving room. The relationship between church and royal government has evolved over the centuries. No longer foreign missionaries in a pagan land, church officials now work alongside secular authorities, providing education, maintaining records, and lending moral authority to the king's rule. The line between religious and secular power often blurs, with senior clerics serving as advisors on matters far beyond spiritual concerns. The receiving room occupies most of the ground floor, a space designed to impress visitors with painted wooden panels depicting biblical scenes alongside images of King Athelstan's victories. A fire burns in the central hearth despite the mild spring weather for comfort rather than necessity. The bishop's representative rises as you enter, a slender man in simple but high-quality robes. Lord Edwin, he greets you with a slight bow. Bishop Theodred sends his regards and requests your assistance in a matter of some delicacy. What follows is a careful dance of political negotiation. The church seeks royal support for a new monastery near Londonwick, while simultaneously asserting its independence in appointing the abbot. You, representing the king's interests, must balance respect for the church with protection of royal prerogatives. This conversation, conducted in Latin rather than the vernacular English of daily life, demonstrates how far Britain has evolved from the simple survival concerns of earlier centuries. Complex institutions now overlay the basic structures of society, creating a framework for governance that will ultimately form the foundation of medieval England. The negotiations conclude satisfactorily, with compromises on both sides. The meal that follows is served on wooden plates for you and your guest, with bread trenchers for the household staff who join you at the lower end of the table. The food itself reflects both local production and imported luxuries, freshly caught river fish alongside preserved olives from Mediterranean shores, local ale served in glass cups from Francia. After the meal, you resume your duties with a visit to the workshops that cluster along the western edge of the settlement. Here, specialized craftspeople practice trades that have become increasingly sophisticated over the generations. The blacksmith no longer simply repairs agricultural implements, but crafts fine weapons and decorative metalwork. The potter's wheel turns out vessels inspired by continental designs. The woodworker creates furniture with carved decorations showing both Christian and older motifs. In each workshop, apprentices learn from masters, ensuring the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next. Some of these young people come from local families, but others have travelled from distant parts of the realm, drawn by Lundenwic's reputation as a centre of trade and craft. This mobility, people moving to pursue opportunities rather than simply fleeing from danger, marks another evolution in British society. The king will be pleased with these, you comment, examining finely crafted silver arm rings that will form part of the royal treasury. In Anglo-Saxon England, such treasures serve not merely as personal adornment, but as tangible symbols of the king's wealth and generosity. When Athelstan rewards loyal followers with gifts of precious metal, he strengthens the bonds that hold his kingdom together. The craftsman beams with pride. Will you tell His Majesty they were made here in Lundenwich? My family came from Danish lands 3 generations ago, but we are English now, through and through. This casual comment highlights one of the most profound transformations of the period, the gradual integration of Norse settlers into the fabric of English society. The descendants of raiders have become citizens, their skills and traditions absorbed into the evolving culture of the island. The afternoon wears on as you inspect the town's defences, walls of earth reinforced with timber, considerably more substantial than the simple palisades of earlier settlements. Though Viking raids have decreased under Athelstan's strong rule, the memory of vulnerability remains embedded in the landscape and the people's consciousness. A group of the king's household troops drill in an open area near the walls, practicing shield formations under the direction of a grizzled veteran. Their equipment reflects the standardization that has developed in England's military organization: shields of uniform size, spears of similar length, helmets of consistent design. This is no longer a hastily assembled local militia, but a disciplined fighting force maintained in peacetime and deployed strategically when needed. As the sun begins its descent, you make your final stop of the day at the stone church near the centre of Lundenwic. Unlike the wooden structures of earlier centuries, this building is designed to last generations. Its walls are decorated with paintings depicting biblical scenes, the colours still vivid in the late afternoon light. Inside, a priest teaches a small group of boys to read and write, sons of merchants and minor officials preparing for roles in the increasingly literate administration of church and state. They practice on wax tablets similar to those used by your clerk, carefully forming Latin letters while simultaneously learning the concepts those symbols represent. You pause to observe, remembering your own education in a similar setting. The transmission of knowledge through writing has accelerated during your lifetime, with the king himself promoting literacy among his officials. Athelstan's court attracts scholars from across Europe, collecting manuscripts and commissioning new works that preserve and extend human understanding. This quiet scene of education represents a profound truth about the so-called Dark Ages of Britain, that darkness never fully descended, that light was preserved in communities of learning, and that knowledge continued to develop even as political structures transformed. The sun is setting as you return home, casting long shadows across Londonwick's streets. Lamps are being lit in workshops and homes, extending productive hours beyond daylight. This simple innovation, the routine use of artificial light, symbolizes how far society has advanced from mere survival toward comfort and efficiency. Your household prepares for evening as you arrive, servants lighting rushlights and candles, setting the table for the evening meal, banking fires to maintain warmth through the night. The rhythms of daily life follow patterns established over centuries, yet the context has evolved dramatically. After the evening meal, shared with your wife and the senior members of your household, you retire to a small room on the upper floor that serves as your private study. Such personal space would have been unthinkable for all but the highest nobility in earlier centuries. Now, it represents the increasing differentiation of living areas according to function, another quiet revolution in daily life. By candlelight, you review documents requiring your attention, records of taxes collected, reports from outlying areas, correspondence from the royal court. The governance of England increasingly happens through such written instruments rather than solely through personal presence and spoken commands. Later, in the bedchamber you share with your wife, you reflect on the day's events. Your bed, a proper wooden frame with rope supports and a mattress stuffed with wool rather than straw, represents another evolution in comfort. The linen sheets and woolen blankets are of finer weave than those available to your ancestors. Even the pillow beneath your head, a luxury once reserved for the highest elites, has become standard for someone of your station. The king's messenger arrived just before sunset, Edith mentions as she removes the pins from her hair. He brings news that Athelstan may visit Londonwick before midsummer. The information doesn't surprise you. The king maintains an active presence throughout his realm, travelling constantly to reinforce his authority through personal appearance. Yet such a visit requires extensive preparation, from securing adequate supplies to arranging suitable accommodations and entertainment. "We'll begin preparations tomorrow," you reply, already mentally listing the tasks ahead. The guilds will want to present their finest work, and the church will expect appropriate donations. This casual reference to guilds, formalized associations of craftspeople with recognized authority over their trades, indicates another institutional development of the period. Such organizations provide structure and standards within their professions, while also serving as vehicles for political representation and social support. As sleep approaches, your thoughts drift to the broader historical context of your life. You stand at the end of what later historians will call the Dark Ages and the beginning of the medieval period proper. The foundations of recognizable English society are taking shape around you. Common law, administrative structures, urban centres, specialised craft production, standardised currency, and increasingly centralised authority. Yet these developments didn't appear suddenly from nowhere. they emerged gradually through the centuries that followed Rome's departure, built by countless individuals adapting to changing circumstances, preserving useful knowledge while developing new solutions to evolving challenges. The people who lived through those supposedly dark centuries never saw themselves as languishing in some benighted era. They were simply living their lives, raising families, practicing trades, worshipping according to their beliefs, and contributing to communities that slowly, incrementally transformed into something new. As your consciousness fades towards sleep, you're unaware that you occupy a pivotal moment in Britain's history, a time when the fragmented kingdoms of post-Roman Britain have largely consolidated into a realm recognizable as England, when literacy and administrative sophistication have revived and expanded beyond Roman precedents, when architecture and craftsmanship have developed distinctive styles that blend multiple cultural influences. You're equally unaware that future generations will look back on your era not as a continuation of darkness, but as the early light of medieval civilization, a society building the foundations of institutions and practices that will endure for centuries to come. Outside your window, London Wyck sleeps beneath a canopy of stars, the same stars that shone over Roman Londinium, over the first tentative Anglo-Saxon settlements, over Viking raiders and Christian missionaries. The river that flows past the settlement's wharves has witnessed the entire transition, carrying boats of changing design but similar purpose throughout the centuries. Within this continuity lies the true story of Britain's so-called Dark Ages, not a narrative of collapse and ignorance, but one of resilience and adaptation, of preserving what proved useful while innovating where necessary. The light of civilization never truly extinguished, it merely changed form, flickering sometimes, but always finding new fuel to sustain its flame. As sleep claims you fully, the rhythms of your breathing merge with those of your wife beside you, of your household around you, of Londonwich beyond your walls, of England stretching to horizons you've never personally witnessed. In this moment of unconsciousness, you embody the quiet persistence of human society through times of transformation, each generation building upon the foundations laid by those who came before, each individual living not in history but in their own present moment. And with that thought, gently close your eyes and drift off to sleep, carrying with you the echoes of these distant lives, lives that shaped the world we inhabit today, though their names and specific deeds have mostly faded from memory. Their legacy lives on in the languages we speak, the towns we inhabit, the institutions we rely upon, and the cultural patterns that still influence our daily existence, even as we rest our heads on much softer pillows than they ever knew.